Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
To those viewing from around the world, there's an interesting, incredibly interesting story in the electronic intifada. They report Israel's crimes against the Palestinian people in Gaza are so terrible that the English language and international law seem to lack the vocabulary to encompass and convey the horror. Quote, "We're running out of words. We're running out of ways to describe to the world how awful it is on the ground and how much worse it's getting." Louis Wateridge, an official with UNRWA, the UN Agency for Palestine Refugees, said on the situation in Gaza this past Tuesday. Will the incoming Trump administration have a positive, peaceful impact on this genocide? Let's find out. Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they happen in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historic context in which most events take place. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between the events and the historic context in which they occur, thus better enabling you to understand and analyze the events that are impacting the global village in which we live. On today's episode, the issue before us is what's going on in occupied Palestine and Lebanon, and will the incoming Trump administration have a positive, negative, or neutral impact? And my guest is an award-winning broadcaster and journalist based in Beirut, Lebanon. You can also find his phenomenal work at freepalestine.video. That's freepalestine.video. My dear brother, Laith Marouf, as always, welcome back. Let's see where we are with...
Great to be with you, Wilmer. Sorry, I was muted there.
Not a problem at all, man. Not a problem at all. Thank you, as always, for joining me. Before we get to these specific issues that I mentioned in the open, there's a broader context in which I think this discussion needs to take place. And a recent event, I think, is a prime example of this. The Telegraph and other outlets have stories. Here's the headline from the Telegraph. Pogroms have returned to Europe and the anti-racist left are silent. Chilling scenes in Amsterdam remind us of an ancient evil. Globalize the Intifada. Radicals cried on the streets of Europe this past year. And last night, earlier this week, it happened. The Intifada was globalized. Jews in Europe were hunted down, humiliated, and beaten. Now, this is a description of violence that took place, I think, in Amsterdam after a soccer match between an Israeli team and a team from Amsterdam.
Yes.
And it's being described, it's being portrayed as the pro-Palestinian faction just decided to randomly and wantonly pillage Jews on the streets of Amsterdam, ignoring the reality that the Zionist faction pulled down Palestinian flags, burned Palestinian flags, attacked cab drivers, chanted racist, just horrific slogans in the streets, and as a result of or in response to that, got their butts kicked in the process. Laith Marouf.
Yes, you are definitely right there on the chronology of events. And let's remember this Maccabi Tel Aviv team is the most racist in the league in the Zionist colony, has been fined many times for chanting racist and genocidal chants against their competitors in the Israeli league that are not Palestinian or Arab. So this is what kind of team we're talking about and what kind of fans. And the Israeli media before the game said that they had sent with the fans Mossad agents to, quote unquote, provide them with protection. And what happened is that the 2 days before the game, these Zionist hooligans run amok in the streets of Amsterdam, as you mentioned, lynching a taxi driver, or attempting to lynch a taxi driver that's Moroccan Dutch, and attacking homes that have Palestinian flags, even trying to set fires to those homes. And finally, the locals responded by defending themselves and defending their city. So when I agree with the use of the word pogrom, but it's the opposite. It was a pogrom by visiting foreigners, Israeli citizens, in the streets of Amsterdam, trying to kill and lynch Arab and Muslim citizens of the city and anyone that supports the liberation of Palestine. We also can agree with the use of the word Kristallnacht, because it was a Kristallnacht for the Arab and Muslim communities in Amsterdam, not the other way around. And the great thing about them using those words, pogrom and Kristallnacht, is that it was used in a suicidal way by the Zionists. Why? Because we know the Western audience has been programmed over the last 80 years with a few keywords that get a Pavlovian response from the Western audience, and those keywords were the Holocaust and anti-Semitism, the top two. And over the last year, the Israelis themselves blew up those wars, because we all watched a real Holocaust being conducted against the Palestinian people 24 hours on our social media, and we saw that anyone who criticized this genocide was called anti-Semitic. So those two words were meaningless. And the last two words in that lexicon that the Western citizenry has been conditioned to respond to were the word pogrom and the word Kristallnacht. And now those words are irrelevant, useless. The Western media and Western elite who parroted those words, remember, this incident happened in a Western capital, Amsterdam. It didn't happen in a concentration camp where international media is not allowed, like Gaza. This happened on the streets of Amsterdam. So people had witnessed what had happened firsthand, and all the social media was already covered for more than 24 hours, the fascist rampage in the streets by these hooligans, before all the Western media and Western elite got the order to parrot those words over and over. So it was a suicidal mission for the Western media and the elite and the Zionists to use those words to try to convince the people of Amsterdam and everybody else that watched this that their eyes are lying and the truth is opposite to what you see.
In fact, it's also important to realize that Sky News reported on this on the ground and reported it fairly balanced. But after the initial report was released, the Sky News report, the package, was pulled off the air, re-edited, so that it could then be used to blame the victims here and accuse the pro-Palestinian faction as being the aggressor, when in fact it was the Maccabee team and the supporters of the Maccabee team that actually started the conflict. And that takes me to a story that I've cited many, many times, and this is really the point, beyond this being an example of some of the most recent horrific actions being taken internationally. For me, the larger point is, and this is a story back from 2022, NBC News had a headline, "In a break with the past, the U.S. is using intel to fight an info war with Russia, even when the intel isn't rock solid." Quote, "It doesn't have to be solid intelligence," one U.S. official said. "It's more important to get out ahead of them," the Russians, Putin specifically, "before they do something." And the point of this is an information war. That's what's one of the elements that is being engaged in here. It is a matter of presenting, or what they call it, designed in consent, that by misleading you, by lying to you, by convincing you, for example, that Russia engagement in Ukraine was unprovoked, by trying to convince you that China actually wants to invade Taiwan, that you will agree with, consent to your tax dollars being used to fund these militaristic endeavors, when in fact it's the West that is provoking this, that is starting this. It is not China. It is not those in Gaza. It's not the it's not the resistance in the Middle East. It is not Russia. Laith Marouf.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought those two things. You know, the report by Sky News and the pulling it out and saying it doesn't conform to their policy. I mean, that was expected, but the next step of re-editing the whole report to make it say the opposite of the original, and what the actual video is in the report, that's a suicidal mission. What the hell? Like, if I was in charge of Zionist propaganda at Sky News, I would just either pull it out and not say anything, the report, right, and then produce 10 other reports that are blaming Arabs and Muslim immigrants in Europe for everything under the sun. You know, that's a good propaganda strategy. But what they did, Sky News, by going that second step of re-editing the same goddamn report with the same footage to make the words of the report say opposite what is the footage, that shows you that the Western propaganda machine, even those, when we're talking, you mentioned that report from 2022 about Ukraine, this is the Western media deciding that they'd rather commit suicide and lose all their credibility than say an ounce of truth. That is not how a good propagandist works.
Good propagandist.
Yes, this is how an ideological, orthodox, censor-based, thinking goes. This is like a dictatorship that doesn't care anymore about anything. And look at, like, I'm going to tie that up to what happened with Amsterdam for a second here. Yesterday, there was a game in the UEFA, the Cup, the European Football Soccer Cup qualifications between Israel and the French national team in Paris. And of course, Paris and France has a huge Arabic and Muslim population. And what did Macron do? He employed 40,000 troops in the streets of Paris and allowed the Mossad and the Shabak and the Israeli police to actually be on the corners of Paris, something like 2,000 of them. And all of this to protect a squadron of Israeli soldiers on R&R, rest and recreation, that were going to the national Stade de France in Paris. What did the French people do? And the government and the police said you can't carry anything about Palestine in the stadium, okay, to the French population. So what did the French population do? They refused to go to their own national team's deciding game if they're going to qualify to the last four in the cup. And the stadium, the national stadium, 70,000 seats, empty, with only the Israelis there. and a few French citizens that decided to go with the Palestinian flags, and then the hooligans beat up the French citizens inside the stadium that dared to carry a Palestinian flag, while the president of France is sitting in the bleachers watching his own citizens getting lynched in his national stadium. And so what do we understand from this? And by the way, one last thing about this, France. Michelon, the head of the left party, Mélenchon, that just won the parliamentary elections, majority in the parliament, and the president, who is, by the way, pro-Palestinian, and his party is pro-Palestinian and anti-war. The president, Macron, has refused them, allowed them to form a government, and appointed by decree his own prime minister. Yesterday, there was an assassination attempt as this game was happening between France and Israel in Paris, an assassination attempt on the head of the left party, the majority party in the parliament, and his party said the Israelis were behind it. Add to it one last thing, by the way. France tied with Israel 0-0 in this game. Did the French national team get death threats? Were they told they're going to lose their job if they score against the puny Israeli team that never won a game ever in their life? This is ridiculous. The amount the Western elite have now made their nations, bow down to Zionism in such ways.
The word I was struggling to get to was manufactured. Manufactured consent. People have to truly understand, and that's one of the values of Connecting the Dots podcast, is we are counter to the narrative of this manufactured consent. The West, the mainstream media lies to you very openly. And again, that's why I keep going back to this NBC News piece from 2022, where they admit we're in an information war, and we will lie. They consider to be the honorable lie that because our cause is just, our tactics may not be, but this is a means to a greater end. They are manufacturing consent, trying to convince you that up is down, left is right, the world is flat, and that the sun revolves around the earth. That's what they're trying to get you to understand. Laith Marouf.
And it's also infantilizing of the public. It's like basically saying you can't tell a kid that Santa's not real because they're not going to, enjoy the gifts or something. So this is the reality that the Western media has been fabricating on the war on Ukraine and what's happening in Palestine, the genocide there, the war here in Lebanon, and more. Now it's becoming so blatant that they're having to justify it openly like this. This is unheard of ways to talk to a population if you claim yourself a democracy and freedom of speech.
E. Walker says they lost 5-0 in Amsterdam. Jabril Joe says they lost in Amsterdam because they couldn't bribe the linesman and the referee. So I think we've been, folks. Thank you all as always, for tuning in. Support the show with these super stickers. Give us a thumbs up. We greatly appreciate it. This is Laith, quickly. If you would, I want to be sure that folks understand the value of freepalestine.video. Explain to the audience. I want you to explain Free Palestine Video. What is it? Why have you started it? What do people find other than brilliant analysis and interviews? What do people, and your charming face, what do people see when they go to freepalestine.video?
Yes, so we're trying to bring day-to-day stories of what's happening on the ground in Palestine, in Lebanon, and now in Jordan also. We have reporters in the West Bank, and we're trying to cover basically the parts of the story that the mainstream media and even our social media is not covering. So we're covering the West Bank. We have 7 reporters there. We're covering here in Lebanon, and now we're just started covering the situation in Jordan. Daily reports, upwards of 7 to 10 reports a day from the field. We have 2 huge shows, one of them called the Wartime Cafe, where we do interviews with personalities in Lebanon, and another called Prisoners of War, where we do interviews with freed prisoners in the West Bank. And all of this content is in English because we want to provide English-speaking audiences with the story and the information. And all of this, of course, requires a lot of funds. We need the donations. You can donate on freepalestine.video, and you can find us on all the social media, all of the platforms, and all the links are there on our website. Myself and the other administrators are all volunteers. We don't get paid, but we pay the youth that are producing all this content on the ground and editing it and translating the content for us.
Got a big shout out here to You're Within the Norms, folks. You can go to you'rewithinthenorms.com. Thank you, Norm. I greatly, greatly appreciate you joining us today. You can go to you'rewithinthenorms.com, another great site talking about medical malpractice, government medical malpractice, and how the government is attacking the communities of color by attacking physicians. Let's go to a story that I woke up to this morning. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Israeli forces push deeper into Lebanon in widening war campaign. Israel is expanding its ground operation in southern Lebanon, sending troops into villages farther from its border in what some former senior security officials worry could turn into a war of attrition. And Laith, talk about this, not only in terms of what's actually happening right now, but the fact that it's taking this long for the Zionist forces of Israel to expand this ground operation. The way we were led to believe this was going to be just, a simple day or two, and the IDF being as a superior fighting force as it is, we'll just go into southern Lebanon, mop this up, move right on, and we don't have to worry about anything. But again, another ass whooping. Laith Marouf.
Yes. A few hours ago, even half an hour ago, there was reports coming from the front lines in South Lebanon. There is 2 areas that the Israelis are trying to reach the second line villages in, one in the coast area of Naqoura, and the other around the Bint Jbeil area in the center of the border between Palestine and Lebanon.
And how far from the Israeli border are these villages?
They're like 3 kilometers away. Okay, so it's 2 miles. All right, so it's not much, right?
Wait. Context is very important. It's taken the IDF this long to go 2 miles?
Oh yes. This is actually what's been mind-boggling for any military analysts and strategists that know military tactics. Because look, in 2006, the Israelis spent 33 days to try to take the south of Lebanon, and they managed to go as far as 30 kilometers only in one valley. But they, in that war, Hezbollah withdrew from the first line villages on the border and allowed the Israelis to come in and, started attacking their supply lines and doing ambushes for them and destroy them. This time, Hezbollah refused to leave the frontline villages, which are militarily fallen. They're undefensible. They're like not on top hills or anything like this. They're in valleys. They're right on the border. There's hills on the other side that are exposing them. But Hezbollah decided to stay now 46 days holding those villages. Yesterday, Hezbollah seems like withdrew from a few frontline villages and allowed the Israelis now to enter to try to reach the second line villages. And now, since the morning, there's been 3 huge ambushes on those 2 axes where the Israelis attempted to reach the second line villages. And up until now, there's at least confirmed 15 Israeli soldiers killed since the morning in those 2 advances, and tens that are injured. We don't have a count of the machinery that has been destroyed, the armaments, but already the Israelis are withdrawing. So they failed, and they fell into the trap, it seems like. But this is, I think will be, whatever happens at the end of this war, the actions of Hezbollah on the ground will be taught for decades in military academies, because this is, unheard of kind of fighting, making, tactics and bravery.
Zach writes, they're trying to enter Qiyam for the 4th time. Let them try to spend the night there. And then Zach also writes, about an hour ago, there was, I think this is what you're talking about, there was a huge, quote unquote, Israeli force was surrounded and ambushed by Hezbollah inside the tomb of Prophet Simon.
Yes. Prophet Shimon, so Prophet Simon or Shimon, and this is a tomb that's thousands of years old. The Israelis, the last time in 2006 when they entered, they used that tomb as like kind of a mess room for their soldiers. And when they were defeated and left all their metal cutlery and plates and so on, and they're in the museum. So today they tried to enter this tomb again. And Hezbollah had set up a ambush for them, and they got whipped, and now they're going back. So look at this. This is a prophet that is in the Old Testament, and they have no respect for this,
for their own guy.
He is our guy. All of these guys
right.
are our guys. Okay,
Right.
They don't represent these prophets. Moses, if he was here today, he would be throwing that stick like Yahya Sinwar on their head and splitting the sea to swallow them. That's what Moses would do today. Anyways, but look, yesterday also Hezbollah conducted an amazing operation hitting the Kiryat in Tel Aviv. The Kiryat is the Pentagon. Okay, they used and released videos of it. Used ballistic missiles, the heaviest load that we've seen yet, plus a wave of very advanced drones, and they hit the Pentagon, basically building, the Kiryat in Tel Aviv, and the bunker where the government meets underground. And so the Israeli media is freaking out since the morning. Because not only did Hezbollah announce it, they showed the videos of it. So this is a serious breach of all security possible. And they also hit the home of outgoing Israeli Minister of War, Gallant. And so we're seeing very advanced operations by Hezbollah, and clearly we're in a new stage of this war now.
And folks, what you're hearing from Laith Marouf coming from Beirut, you're not hearing this on MSNBC. You're not hearing this on CNN. Joy Reid isn't talking about this. Rachel Maddow isn't talking about this. And that's why connecting the dots is so valuable. We're doing this for you, but we can't do it without you. And so please, those super stickers and the thumbs up and all of those little things, they do make a difference. Every dollar matters. So please help us out as best you can. And so, Laith, let's get to the question that I asked at the opening of the program, which is we now know the election is over. There will be a second Trump administration coming in. Has there been any sentiment expressed? How is this being discussed? How in Lebanon, in the region? What's the sense of a second Trump administration? Will there be escalation? Will there be movement towards peace? Does anybody really know? Does anybody care? Does it matter? Laith Marouf.
Obviously everybody cares, but looking at the appointments.
No, in fact, what let me just be clear. What I meant by does anybody care? What I meant was, do they just say this is not Biden foreign policy, this is not Trump foreign policy, this is American foreign policy, so the president doesn't matter. That's what I meant. That's what I meant.
Yes, you are right on that. In that sense, we know, looking at 100 years of record, or 80 years, whatever, of American engagement on the issue of Palestine and in the Arabic world in general, there has never been any difference what president comes in. The only thing that is different is what tactics you use. And clearly the empire decided that its liberal face with all the intelligence and operations and assassinations and hidden engagement in this war have not worked, and so the empire is deciding right now to go with the full-out gangster face, pirates, bandits, cowboy, and so we will see a change in the tactics. And when we look at the names that Trump has nominated in all of these positions of defense and foreign affairs and the UN ambassador of the US, these are all outright, not only Zionists, but outright Armageddonists. Okay, so what is expected is that when Trump will come in, he'll come in guns blazing in the region here. Looking at how things are changing on the ground, it's clear that from now till Trump coming into power mid-January, then there will be everybody will be trying to win as many points as possible to either make it that Trump decides, well, there is no way we can go into this war, and he'll sit down on a table of negotiations with axis of resistance, and or in the case of Netanyahu, what Netanyahu wants to do is in the next 2 months occupy as much of Lebanon and destroy as much of the axis of resistance as possible, so Trump can say, hey, that's a plan we can continue on, is successful. You see, so these next 2 months will be the most critical, and both the axis of resistance and Netanyahu have a incentive to raise the intensity of this war to the maximum without the direct intervention of the United States, so to push Trump to their direction of either negotiations and or continuing this war. And I think we will, in any case, see ourselves in a much bigger war, in the next few days. It's been multiple days in a row, 4 or 5 days in a row now, that the Israelis are attacking Syria, Damascus, Iraq, Yemen. Everything is out in full scale war right now.
In fact, well, let me say to Rampalus Sense, Rampalus Sense says, I'm sorry, Laith, I cannot watch some of your videos because they're too gruesome and I cry too much from impotence. And I understand, I feel that sentiment, and this just demonstrates the atrocities that are being committed by the West. As I quoted in the open, it defies description. We don't have any language anymore to really express and describe these atrocities, yet a lot of people wanted us to vote for Kamala Harris. You can't back genocide, Laith Marouf.
Yes, and to our viewer that is feeling frustrated or not doesn't know what to do, look, we are moving to a possibility of a world war, and the responsibility of American citizens and Western citizens beyond the immediate responsibility about what's happening here in terms of genocide and war is to think of what's going to happen to your country. And so, during the Nazi era, 70,000 Germans carried arms against the Nazis and were martyred. They were the honorable Germans that fought the Nazi regime. Not calling on you to carry arms, but there is a plethora of things that American citizens and Western citizens can do that will end the genocide, but also save you from the possibilities of the internment camps that come. Trump any day right now, once he comes into power, will be implementing that Non-Citizens Act there that, where he wants to deport 20 somewhat million people. He's not going to go after the Latinos, believe me. He will be going after Palestinian, Arab, and Muslim communities and anyone who supports them. This is going to be the priority. Though we will see internment camps on this issue of this war as it grows into a world war. So what are the American and Western citizens doing to protect themselves, to save themselves if they don't have a drive to rebel because of the genocide being committed in their name? At least have the courage to save yourself.
E. Walker wrote, deleted my comment about the troops not used to fighting real soldiers, used to fighting against rocks being thrown. And then he says, bye, as though we deleted the comment. And Ramplesense writes, E. Walker, YouTube is responsible for deleting the comments, not Dr. Leon. It happens everywhere to everyone. We're supposed to have a First Amendment. We're supposed to have the right to free speech. In fact, again, I go back to this NBC article. They feel free to lie to you to promote their narrative. But when those of us with any type of access to accurate information want to use platforms to disseminate that information, then, of course, all of a sudden we're the bad guys. You're within the norms asks, the question I have is, wait a minute, he had two questions. The question I have, his first question was about, are there Mossad troops in the United States? Here it is. Question I have is, does Mossad have special units operating within the United States to target certain people who are anti-Israeli? Laith.
Oh, yes, for sure. And 3/4 of them are the Congress and the Senate.
Because, in fact, I believe Vice President Harris's husband is a AIPAC lobbyist.
Yes. So you
Doug
have
Imhoff, the first gentleman, Doug Im. So let me just jump in real quick and connect this dot. So when you have Kamala Harris standing for the American people, basically ignoring genocide and refusing to challenge genocide, the guy she wakes up to every morning is an AIPAC lobbyist. So it's easy to understand why she takes the position she takes. Laith Marouf.
Yeah, and I would go as far as actually the Democrats purposefully lost the war, the election, the war. I mean, look at it. They basically sabotaged themselves. They purposefully kept Biden to the last minute and purposefully put him in front of TV at a months ahead of the election, where never heard of such a debate. And then jammed in Kamala Harris with no vote, and then she refused to differentiate herself from Trump all of those were actually acts of somebody that does not want to win. And so, believe me, they did the same thing as the Labour Party in the UK when they wanted Corbyn not to govern. They made their own leader lose just for the state of Israel. And this is the same thing. The elite in the United States wanted Trump to be the new face of the empire so he can give this ugly face of a gangster to try to scare some of the other competitors of the US that haven't been deterred by the liberal face of the empire. There is Mossad agents on the campuses, in the universities. When I was like 20 somewhat years ago, the first Arab to be elected to a student union executive in Canada. Student unions in Canada are a reality, and they're accredited by the government. It's not like the US where there's no such thing as student unions. I had death threats every day from Mossad agents on campus. They would come to my face. They tell me that they're Mossad agents. So it's you have it in your society everywhere, in the media. What do you think by the way, we brought that story earlier of the Sky News report. Mm-hmm. The editor that changed the story is a Mossad agent. It's on her CV openly. She was working with the Mossad. So you have people positioned in your media in those junctures of who is the editor of any story that comes from the region, who similarly in your political class. We remember Congressman, I forgot his name, is a very nice guy, who said that every congressman has a AIPAC handler. Luckily, he re-won his election. Anyway, so this is the reality. There's Mossad everywhere in the US and in the West, and American and Western citizens that need to do something about that to gain their freedom again.
And Woody asks, when will Iran respond? Also, looking at Turkey, and where is Al-Assad is in Syria. The president of Turkey, Erdogan. If you could speak to both of those.
Yes, the first one was what? I'm sorry.
When will Iran respond?
Yes, they will respond shortly. Just earlier in the morning, the representative of the Ayatollah, the head of the Consultative Council of Iran, was in Beirut and in Damascus. So it's clear that there is some buildup. Also, on the border with the Golan Heights, there is huge activity. The Israelis are digging trenches, and the UN force in the demilitarized zone is saying that they are violating the demilitarized zone to build these trenches. So the buildup is coming, and the attack of Iran will be timed with something much bigger. The border, the battlefield of Syria will suddenly erupt. I think it's going to be the major battles zone is the Golan Heights. And because it is legitimate Arabic occupied lands that Syria and the Axis of Resistance can claim. You see, the Axis of Resistance doesn't want to immediately fight a war on the land of Palestine, but if it's fought on the Golan Heights, the whole world is going to be on the side of the Syrians and the Axis of Resistance. And once the Golan Heights are liberated, all of North Palestine is illegally liberated immediately. Anyways, the second question was about Erdogan and Turkey. Erdogan is a chameleon, and there's a huge separation between the words that he uses and the actions he takes. He is claiming that they're stopped any trade with Israel. They're going to cut ties. I didn't see them close the embassies yet. And suddenly all the ships that are going from Turkey to Israel are camouflaging their destination on the shipping apps that you can see. They claim that they're going to Egypt, and then suddenly you see them ported in Israel. So I don't see Turkey changing its position for real because it is an occupied country with American nuclear weapons stationed in it.
Talk a little bit about Syria's role here, because just yesterday, Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, a Democrat,
What a name, man.
was talking about Trump's nomination of Tulsi Gabbard to be the national defense. I forget what the position is, but anyway. And one of the things that Abigail Spanberger said was Tulsi Gabbard should not be confirmed for this position because as a private citizen, she went to Syria and she met with the brutal dictator al-Assad, who gassed his own people. And we know, and this was on MSNBC, and we know that the story of al-Assad gassing his own people was disproven. It's a lie, but this is another example of how the misinformation, the disinformation, no matter how you feel about Tulsi Gabbard, whether you like her or you don't, just tell the truth. You don't have to fabricate stories in order to try to impugn her character, Laith Marouf.
Yes, they always go for the overkill. Obviously, this is one of their weaknesses. The Zionists, they're always like an elephant in a China
shop.
store. Yeah, China shop. And so, I mean, you look at the cabinet of Trump, it can't be more pro-Zionist, even Armageddonist than it can be. And then there is this small anomaly of, this woman having either, this situation of going to Syria or criticizing the war on Ukraine, and she's got called like Putin's puppet, right? So it's not enough for them. They want 1,000%. You can't hate 90% of the enemies of the Zionists. You have to hate 100% of them. You can't deviate even a little bit to bring a better outcome for the United States imperialism. Truly, she will not be having much effect on Trump's positions, except if there's going to be a battle inside the Trump administration about these files of Ukraine, Syria, Palestine, Iran. Those files, as we saw from the first presidency of Trump, even when he claimed he wanted to withdraw from Syria, he couldn't. There was almost a mutiny against him inside the establishment, and he backed down from it, and then went the other way, saying we're going to loot the oil of Gaza, of Syria and Iraq. So I don't think the Zionists should worry, or the pro-Ukraine people should worry, because Tulsi Gabbard got appointed to some useless position.
We got some super stickers. I gotta acknowledge Mile High Brother. Thank you so much for that $10 sticker. Mainstream and alternative media are whitewashing Tulsi Gabbard's Hindufa and Zionist relationships and leanings. Why do you think this is so? I think you just pretty much just spoke to that.
Yes, yes. I didn't mention obviously the Hindu nationalists, the Hindutva, connections that she has, but Zionism goes hand in hand with Hindu nationalism because of their combined hate for Muslim people, and we see the growth of this Hindutva movement inside the United States and inside Canada, wherever there is huge Hindu populations. And in Canada, it's getting really bad, the situation, because look at what's happening in the UK also. There's so many Hindus that are getting into positions of power in the UK, in Canada, in the United States, although their populations are as insignificant as Jewish populations in those countries. So we see suddenly the Hindu nationalists like Tulsi Gabbard becoming the choice brown face for the empire, even put into positions of being a prime minister of the UK. Yes, we should always be worried about Tulsi Gabbard's, Hindutva, and Zionist positions.
And that takes us to another 1399 super sticker from Daniel Drazenovich. Would Laith be so kind as to give his definition of Zionism? I think that ties directly to the point you were just making about Hindutva.
Yes, so Zionism is the belief, the political ideology and the political project to create a Jewish state in the land of Palestine. That's as simple as it is. It can't be more clear. Zionism is a political ideology that has a political project, which is the creation of a Jewish state in the land of Palestine. And we ask anyone that you should ask anyone that says they are a Zionist, on what grounds do they support the creation of a Jewish state in the land of Palestine? Do they believe? There's only three grounds that you will hear a Zionist use. One is that there is a God up in the sky that is not the God of Abraham, that said we are all come from one mother and father, nor the God of Moses that said don't kill, don't steal, don't covet your neighbor's belongings. No, they believe in a vicious, malicious God that has a chosen people that are above everybody else, and everybody else is just slaves to them. And that malicious God says that you can kill, steal, and covet your neighbor's belongings if they're not Jewish. And the second justification that the Zionists may give is the claim that Jewish Europeans, descendants of converts to Judaism, have a higher purity of blood somehow 4,000 years later since the creation of Judaism than the local indigenous Palestinian population that were the original Jews, converted mostly to Christianity as the original Christians, and converted mostly to Islam that are as original Muslims. And so this is this pseudoscience, blood quantum justification. Mm-hmm. And the last justification that a Zionist will give you is that there was a Holocaust at the hands of the Christian and secular Europeans against their Jewish compatriots in Europe, and apparently the Palestinians have to pay for it. So Zionism is a fascist, racist, supremacist, colonialist, genocidal ideology that we all should oppose.
And has really nothing to do with Judaism. Judaism is merely the cover that is being used, the religious cover that is being used to cloak that racist ideology, colonialist ideology that you just described. Ramplant Sense says that's not what Tulsi Gabbard said. And if you're responding to my comment, I wasn't quoting Tulsi Gabbard. I was quoting Congresswoman Senator Abigail Spanberger about Tulsi Gabbard's actions. I wasn't quoting Tulsi Gabbard when I made that comment. Interesting development here. Elon Musk, it is reported, secretly met with Iran's UN envoy. This is from the New York Times. Trump's close ally, Elon Musk, has met with the Iranian ambassador to the UN, allegedly to diffuse tensions, and Iranian sources are reported as saying the conversation was positive and good news. Any clarification or any other understanding of that, Laith Marouf?
Well, the Iranian government has not issued any statement like this about this, and the person who is quoted or wrote this article for the New York Times is this Iranian dissident kind of in the US that supports the Shah and all the trouble making inside Iran, and has a history of fabricating events and fabricating sources. So I personally, when I read this headline, I thought to myself, this is another one of those manufacturing consent situations. They're trying to preempt the possibility that Musk may outreach to the Iranians, or Trump may outreach to the Iranians to try to diffuse the tension. by starting to claim that they're doing it right now before they got into office. A president elect cannot do this kind of work until they're in office. Otherwise, they'll be challenging the sitting president. And so this is all fabricated. There's no such thing that happened of a meeting of Musk with the Iranian ambassador at the UN.
There's and I mentioned this at the open, and this is now where I want to get to the electronic intifada. Israel committing gravest international crimes in North Gaza. Israel's crimes against the Palestinian people in Gaza are so terrible that the English language and international law seem to lack the vocabulary to encompass and convey the horror. Quote, "We're running out of words. We're running out of ways to describe the world how awful it is on the ground and how much worse it's getting." And one of the things that really the two things that really grabbed me about this: one, we're running out of language, and two, it's getting worse, as though it can get worse.
Yes. I mean, the reason that we're running out of language is because the horrors that we're seeing haven't been described before, and that we have already used all the available language there, and it has been
it's become trite.
Yes, it's become unsuccessful.
Right.
Yes, it's unsuccessful to move people into change, the elite in the West, and because those crimes that are prescribed under international law, crime of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, all of those have been rendered mute.
Mm-hmm.
Because international law is de facto. It's not what's written. It's what can you bring into fact. And clearly, genocide is not against international law right now, because de facto wise, nobody's enforcing the stop of the genocide. Therefore, it's legitimate to genocide people. We're in this moment of total chaos. All the laws and structures and bodies that were created to govern relations between states after World War I have been rendered irrelevant and unable to manage international relations. And therefore, we're now in this no international law moment. And the United Nations is teetering on collapse already with the targeting of the UNRWA by the whole Western Bloc, and beginnings of targeting of other agencies, and the irrelevance of medical, safety for medical crew or journalists. All of these gone. We're living in the jungle right now.
As we wrap this up, I had yesterday's show was focused on Haiti and the what I would consider to be genocide in Haiti. Dr. Jemima Pierre was my guest. And folks, so let me just quickly interrupt myself and say, I go from Jemima Pierre yesterday, Dr. Pierre yesterday, talking about Haiti, to Laith Marouf today. Come on, folks. Show our brother some love. Anyway, do you see parallels between the United States policy in Haiti and the United States policy towards occupied Palestine?
Yes, definitely. And I mean, also the position that both people are in, the Haitian people and the Palestinian people, in terms of the weight of imperialism on their back. I mean, the Palestinians are facing right now genocide because the West cannot forgive them for refusing to say that, yeah, Jews are more supreme to us and our God is false and please take all our land. That we're standing 100 years later after the beginning of this genocidal project and refusing to bow down. Similarly, the Haitian people are paying right now still today for their courage in expelling the French occupation and ending slavery in the Caribbean because of their actions, and their support for the Latin American revolutions of Bolivar and others, that without the Haitian Revolution, they wouldn't also have been liberated from the Spanish imperialism in Latin America. So the Haitian people have a history of being ungovernable by imperialists, just like the Palestinian people have that history. And what we see the West as a whole collectively continuing to do in Haiti is because of this viciousness that the West has for anyone that defies their dictates. And today, Haiti, if it's liberated, and I pray every day for our brothers to be liberated in Haiti. If it's liberated, it will rise to the importance it had the moment after the end of French occupation and colonialism, because it is the gate to all of the Caribbean and all of Central and Latin America, Haiti. And if it's liberated, all of those countries, the light of liberation will shine on them also.
And let me quickly follow on to your point. People need to, again, this is why we're connecting the dots here on this program, because people will tend to view the atrocities being created by U.S. foreign policy in Haiti in a silo. They will look at the atrocities being committed on behalf of the United States and funded by the United States in occupied Gaza and occupied Palestine in a silo. They don't understand the interrelatedness of these objectives. And I go back to this point. I remember it was about a year and a half ago, there was an interview on NBC, the late Yahya Sinwar, after his apartment had been hit by a missile, sitting in his apartment being interviewed by an NBC reporter, and there's a poster of George Floyd off in the corner of Yahya Sinwar's apartment, showing the Palestinians are right there in sync with the plight of African Americans. And this is something that this is a connection that the mainstream media does not want us to make, even though Dr. King made the connection, Brother Malcolm made the connection, Madiba in South Africa, Nelson Mandela made the connection. We need to understand the interrelatedness of imperialism and the atrocities that are being created with our tax dollars through this hideous ideology.
Yes.
Kwame Ture, thank you, Zach. Kwame Ture made the same connection. Go ahead.
Yes, and I would say that, for us as Palestinians and Arabs in general, we have this affinity to our brothers and sisters inside the empire, whether it's the working class, racialized communities, and so forth, indigenous communities, because we are living what they already lived. What the indigenous people lived in the United States and Canada, and still are living hundreds of years ago, we're living it now. And we also know that if our brothers and sisters inside the empire are liberated or are able to win their liberation, that changes what the United States is, and it will end its imperialism on our lands here. So we root for, this is why Malcolm X is a revered person in our region here. This is why the pictures of Ferguson and all the Black Lives Matter and the names of all the martyrs in the streets of the United States are known. This is why Aaron Bushnell has his face up in the streets of Yemen, because we know our liberation is connected, and imperialism, capitalism, colonialism are the issue. It is not our cultures, our languages, or our quote unquote races that differentiate us.
And I think I'm finally figuring out the proper pronunciation here. This is a great question for us to end on. Ramplance 01. Ramplance, I hope I finally figured out how to pronounce that. Question. Oh, wait a minute. Well, okay. What will we do or can do if this time Trump says that he will give the West Bank to Israel? What will happen? And then we got one more question.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. If he does that, it's actually good. That means that there's one Palestine, one state, and all its citizens, all those who live in that territory, will have to be its citizens. Amazing. This is this is how the Zionists are losing the plot.
And let me say, that's not the answer I was expecting, but that's a brilliant answer, Laith Marouf.
Yeah, so let him do it. Once he does it, it's not anymore an issue of occupation. There's only one quote unquote Israel, when in reality it's one Palestine, and the citizens will have to be given their rights. So it's going to become easier. We're already, look, there is no return for Israel. It's done. It's already written, the end of the state of Israel. The game that yesterday in Paris shows you that nobody wants to see their faces. Everybody will be celebrating once this state is over. There's no coming back. And anything that Trump does will hasten the end. So we want him to do these crazy actions. It is, even for me, I know it's going to be hurtful to hear this for American populace. I want him for Americans. I want him to clamp down on all of you. This is the way that some of you will come off your couches and do something. So the crazier the emperor is and his actions are, the more motivation to resist it will be, and the faster the empire will collapse.
Jonathan Soul with a $20 or $19.99 super sticker. Show a brother some love. Thank you. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov asked for release of Russian hostages. Will Hamas comply? When can we get Dr. Leon and Garland back together? Well, Garland and I are having those conversations, and Laith knows that quite well. Thank you for that. But talking about Lavrov, Laith Marouf.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, of course, if Hamas can deliver on that, because there is no ceasefire. There's no way that Hamas can be able to somehow get those prisoners of war out of their hiding place in the middle of a war. So, no, it's not going to happen. And if the Russians can guarantee some release of Palestinian prisoners of war on the other side, and maybe, but it will all depend on a momentary, at least, ceasefire for that to happen, and I don't think it will happen. Israel will not allow Russia such a win.
There you go. There you go. And as we take us out, Laith Marouf, what are the two or three major points that you want this audience to understand based upon the ongoing reality on the ground right now?
Yeah, I've been saying this for a whole year right now. This is the war for the liberation of Palestine. It will end only by the liberation of Palestine or the total genocide, eradication of the Palestinian people. And as we are seeing right now, the stages are playing out as I predicted for over a year now. And so we're moving towards a full regional war. And maybe by January, there will be direct NATO involvement in this war, and then Russia and China will move in also in this war. So prepare yourself that, to find yourself in a full world war. That is, if the American and Western citizens and public do not take their responsibility seriously and at least make the situation on the ground inside the capitals of the West unattainable for these Zionists that are refusing to represent the will of the American people. 70% of American citizens want a full arms embargo on Israel. Those 70% need to be taking action to force their government to represent their will. Similarly, in all of Europe. And if the Western audience doesn't take this responsibility, they will find themselves as spectators in a nuclear holocaust.
My dear brother, Laith Marouf, thank you, man. As always, you are so gracious whenever I call. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Peace and blessings to you and to your family, and look forward to talking to you soon.
See you soon.
All right, my man. Thank you. Folks, thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Thank you all for showing our brother some love. Greatly appreciate those thumbs up. Greatly appreciate those super stickers. Please follow and subscribe, leave a review, share the show, follow us on social media. You can see all the links below in the scroll at the bottom of the screen in the show description. Again, we truly, truly appreciate it. We are here for you, but we cannot do this without you. And remember that this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. Talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See you all next week. See you Monday. Got a great, great show coming up for you on Monday as well. Until then, I'm Dr. Leon, Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a great weekend. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.